So, after we looked into Executor for next step, essentially emulating a Macintosh on the NeXT workstation, today we're raising the bar once more. Meet Daydream. Unlike Executor, Daydream doesn't emulate the Mac at all. It runs Apple's System 7 natively on NeXT hardware, and in doing so makes the NeXT become a Macintosh in its own right. Under the dust, there's history waiting to boot. I'm the Vintage Collector, and these are my stories. Developed and sold by Quix Computerware AG, a Swiss company based in Ebikon near Luzern, Daydream was not an emulator. And this part is really important to stretch out. At first glance, it seems like the same idea, running Macintosh applications on the NeXT machine through emulation. But the technology behind Daydream is fundamentally different. Instead of re-implementing the Macintosh Toolbox and translating API calls, Daydream uses a vanilla System 7 together with an external ROM box carrying an original Macintosh ROM. That ROM box plugs into the DSP port on the back of the NeXT, and when you launch Daydream, you're not emulating Mac, you're running the real Macintosh System Software directly on the NeXT hardware. There are two key elements to make this work. First, it's the Motorola 68K CPU, which runs at the heart of both the Macintosh and the NeXT workstations. So no just-in-time translation is needed, the 68K compiled binaries run at native speed with little to zero overhead. Second, there's a custom Daydream kernel. The kernel abstracts the NeXT hardware like SCSI disk access and printing support, acting as an intermediate layer between the Macintosh System Software and NeXT hardware. It also provides the necessary interfaces to the ROM box. And Quix stated it very clearly, Daydream isn't an emulator, it's a hardware abstraction layer. But there's a problem today. Those ROM boxes are rare unicorns, and without one, Daydream won't run. Even though there have been some talks into recreating the module, this never really materialized. And that's where Darkmatter comes in. Darkmatter is a community patch by one of the original Daydream developers, modifying the Daydream kernel to use a Macintosh ROM image residing on the hard drive. As shown here, the patch tool takes a Daydream 2.11 kernel and a specific Mac ROM image to build a new Darkmatter kernel. Luckily, you don't need to do the patching yourself, you'll find a pre-patched kernel already along with the Daydream files on nextcomputers.org. So let's see Daydream and Darkmatter in action. To install Daydream and Darkmatter, we'll be starting off again inside the previous emulator. We'll see it running on the real gear in a minute. As I don't have the ROM box, we'll skip over the first step, which would be to shut down the system, connect the ROM box and then reboot. Next, one should copy the original kernel and app directly into the root of the file system. Then we'll have to copy the System 7 boot image over from the NeXT floppy. You might notice that I'm also creating separate copies along we go, so I can work with the extracted files separately if needed. As for the actual System 7 boot image found in your root file system, double-click it to uncompress. Then I'll repeat the process with the files contained on the 2.11 update floppy. Apparently, I could have probably skipped to copy the kernel and app from the first disk then, as the update replaces it anyway. Last but not least, I'll copy over the patched Daydream kernel, to keep the original kernel just in case I simply renamed it. As noted in the user's guide, let's make a bigger hard drive image so we have enough room for apps. Yes, Daydream uses virtual hard disk images, a concept we normally associate with emulators and virtual machines. Daydream can also access connected SCSI devices, most notably the system hard drive or removable drives. It wouldn't be wise though to grant Daydream direct access to the system hard drive in order to not mess it up. So for now we'll settle with the defaults, hiding all SCSI devices. To launch it, simply hit the Go menu entry, which drops us back into the ROM monitor, and wow, how awesome is that place? The Macintosh System Software starting up exactly like it was a real Mac. Think about how crazy this is for an early 1990s machine. Instead of waiting for developers to port apps to NeXT, Quix basically brought the entire Macintosh software universe over instantly. Quix got a lot of attention and praise for Daydream, but it also sparked controversy. Macworld described Apple as being irritated by Quix's work since it enabled macOS on non-Apple hardware. Archive.org didn't capture reliable snapshots of the Quix website throughout 1997, so the earliest usable snapshot I could find goes back to January 1998. And by then, Quix stated that despite strong demand and press attention, Apple refused to come to licensing terms. And this is where the timing gets interesting. Apple had already acquired NeXT, and it's widely known that Steve Jobs wasn't a fan of Mac clones. Once he returned to Apple, the clone market was shut down. Now, Daydream wasn't a classic Mac clone, but it definitely lived in the same territory, running macOS on non-Apple hardware and even relying on original Apple ROMs. So Daydream didn't die because it was a bad product, it died because Apple didn't want that future to exist. Performance-wise, the 68040 NeXTstation running Daydream was claimed to come close to the speed of a Macintosh Quadro 900. I don't have a Quadro 900 to bring up for direct comparison, but I'll put the NeXTstation on trial against an SE30 and a Performer 450 in a moment. First though, I want to conduct a little experiment. The documentation for Daydream 2.11 claims that you can run System 7.5. And you really want to do this, as the included System 7.1 is a stripped down minimal system with barely anything installed. Some people say also System 7.6 is possible, and by using patches even Mac OS 8 should be made to run, but I decidedly didn't go down that rabbit hole. At least at this early stage, the System 7.5 seems to work. Disks are automatically ejected when copying is completed, asking for the next after disk, exactly as on the real Mac. But will it boot once finished? Oh yes, it totally does. And see how it compares to the SE30 and the Performer 450. Installing software of standard type floppy disks works like a charm, although you're restricted to high density 1.44 MB floppies only. The 800K double density disks won't work. Mac TCP works out of the box to connect to a TCP/IP network. But what I did observe though, that the machine repeatedly locked up during FTP file transfers, which kind of became annoying. So far, I haven't found a resolution to this issue. When it happens, your way out is to press Command and tilde once, which forces a reboot. In order to return to the ROM monitor and boot into NeXT, just hit Command plus tilde once more. Luckily, there's no need to always boot into NeXT just to launch Daydream. Using the bsd command and pointing it to the Daydream kernel, you can do that diversion directly from the ROM monitor. At least I could install Lemmings, especially as we saw it struggle running off Executor in my last episode. But what a disappointment to see it refusing to run because of the Nexus 12-bit graphics. And you can't set it to 8-bit color or grayscale mode in the control panel. So I turned over to updating to System 7.5.3, hoping that it at least would help concerning these sudden network related lockups. But it didn't recognize my SCSI CD-ROM upon inserting. Wasn't there something about SCSI device access? Right, in the Daydream map, I let it detect all SCSI devices and permitted it to access SCSI ID 3, which is the CD-ROM drive. That sorted it and the upgrade went through. But still no luck with the network lockups. Well, I then observed the download folder. See how a folder appears out of nowhere? That's because Fetch is starting to decompress the Stuffit expander in the background. Maybe it's causing too much stress and thus locks it up. So I turned it all off, which seemed to resolve the issue. So maybe it wasn't the network after all, maybe it was just disk access timing. And honestly, that wouldn't surprise me, considering I'm using an ST2 SCSI instead of an actual hard drive. Remember that I had observed some odd lockups already before when installing NeXT to the ST2 SCSI. In the end, I downloaded Prince of Persia, which also refused to run for the same reason of the color depth. So I gave it a shot with Mac-Toolbox, and thankfully that one runs. So what's my verdict? Daydream is not just Mac on NeXT, and it's an entirely different philosophy than Executor. Executor is a technical recreation, a Mac built from scratch through reverse engineering. In contrast, Daydream runs a real System 7 using real Macintosh ROMs and adds a custom kernel as a hardware abstraction layer between the Mac world and the NeXT hardware. It's not perfect, the 12-bit color limitation kills a lot of games, but as a piece of engineering, this is absolutely mind-blowing and it shows just how far you can push a NeXT. Far enough that it boots into the Macintosh System Software. What's your opinion on this? Share it in the comments below. I'm the Vintage Collector and this was my story for today. Thanks for watching and see you again next Sunday. Next on the Vintage Collector. We checked out Executor NeXT, but the claim is it also ran surprisingly well on DOS. So let's test that before we turn over to macOS 10 10.0 and dive into this first generation Apple X Surf.